Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 12 of Mahou Shoujo Madoka Magica. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger. Madoka had saved Homura from her despair. But at the same time, she said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make a wish. But, I know I've got a good wish now. It'll be worth it. So, one has to wonder what exactly she's playing at, because she did save Homer from despair, but now she's just doing something that'll make her despair again. So, seeing as how she basically now knows the truth, she better make pretty darn well sure that what she's doing isn't going to exacerbate things any further. So I guess, for what it's worth, she's pretty sure that this will ensure that everything Homura has done will not be in vain. Aw man, Kyubey is putting the noose around his own neck right now. No matter how big your wish is, I'm sure it will happen. That's a hefty wish. Essentially wishing that she could prevent any magical girl from becoming a wish retroactively, past, present, and future, This is essentially rewriting the entire universe. So Kyubey realizes the gravity of this, are you trying to become a god? She says, I don't care what you call me, but I'm going to ensure that the suffering all these people suffer will not continue. There we go. She doesn't even deign to call him by his name. Grant my wish, incubator. That is a powerful command. So, if what Kyubey had said was true, then there really is no way that that wish can't not be granted. So, it seems we're peeking into a new timeline here. Or rather, it's a hallucination or something. Mami's basically telling Madoka, you've essentially ruled out any possibility of you being a corporeal being anymore. Like, you are now literally a god, and as a result of that, you will be working for all eternity to make good on your wish. So I'm wondering if this is some sort of representation of the afterlife here. Mami and Kyoka are all, I guess, approving of the wish, saying, boy, you made a big one. So it's a nice little scene, especially because the friendship between these three that might otherwise have formed was denied in the timeline we saw. It's nice to know that if circumstances were different, they all could have been friends. I think this is a nice representation of what Madoka is capable of. She essentially creates, I don't know what you'd call it, like a matrix that now spreads all throughout time and space. It destroys the storm of Walpurgis Nacht, and then it shows up just in time to save this otherwise despairing magical girl. You know, just like that, she sucks out all the despair and basically frees them from the cycle. Granted, I suppose they do die in the process, but, I mean, it can't be perfect. I guess in a sense, Madoka sort of becomes like a magical girl angel of death, in that she is the one that ferries these people to the afterlife. And we get to see like all the various locales in which she appears, you know, past, present, and future. I guess it's a nice way of showing that her wish truly is eternal and everlasting. And that it spans time and space, and basically nothing can stop her at this point. It's almost like a nice biblical parallel in that Madoka's sacrifice has essentially saved everyone else. I also think it's notable that not even Walpurgis Nacht is immune or excluded from her wish. You know, even this great unstoppable evil threat is also saved. So now that Madoka has essentially ceased to exist as a person, one has to wonder what precisely will happen to Homura, since her wish has trapped her in a time loop, and that time loop is focused on a person who has transcended reality. I feel like Kyubei's being a bit of a jerk here, saying like, hey, look and see what happens to Madoka as she becomes a witch. Like, I feel like he's just trying to do this to spite Homura. So it seems like, in a sense, while Madoka has in fact saved everything, she's also doomed a universe to, well, essentially depredation and destruction. You know, as Madoka becomes a witch, she's so gargantuan in form that she dwarfs the planet Earth itself. But at the same time, you have to imagine that Madoka's wish would even prevent herself from becoming a witch, thus sort of, well, transcending herself, everything, reality itself. I'd imagine Kyubei wasn't banking on this, and that this is now truly happening, Madoka essentially slaying herself. Well, I don't know, that really screws up everything, doesn't it? Yeah, so there we go. Madoka, having prevented herself from becoming a witch, she's sort of rendered herself without a beginning and without an end, and therefore eternal and never having existed. This is getting into really heavy territory. And, it's still not entirely clear what's going to happen to Homura as a result of this. Is her wish null and void, or is she still a magical girl? But if she is, her wish was based on something that no longer exists in this universe. And not just that she made the wish and then it ceased to exist, but something that never had existed in the first place. So it's interesting that now in this sort of weird universal superposition, Madoka has essentially achieved actual divinity in that she's now aware of all the universes that have occurred, and she's aware of the true depth of sacrifice Homura has gone to. It's kind of bittersweet in retrospect that Madoka's best friend is someone she only recognizes as such now that she has transcended mortal reality and ceased to exist. I mean, Homer raises a good point. You are essentially alone in this higher plane of reality. But at the same time, what is being alone to a god? I feel like Madoka, now having achieved divinity, being alone really doesn't have any meaning. So I guess that's one little act of goodwill. Here, hang on to this ribbon I always wear. Even if I no longer exist in this world, this will be a reminder that I once did. And that's sort of equal parts heartwarming and ominous. I don't know when I will see you again, but that she will see you again is a certainty. I guess what that sort of means is, when you eventually do turn into a witch, I will be there to prevent it. So now we have good old Kyosuke. He has finally managed to, I guess, heal up and get back to his own life. But I'm wondering what exactly the point is if basically everyone, or not everyone, but all these people he knew are now gone. Ooh, strike that. I'm thinking this is a different timeline. Alright, this is an interesting scene actually, in that Madoka's sort of settling things with Sayaka. I mean, maybe not settling, but this is the outcome of your wish, so I'll let you see the fruits of that, but I'll, unfortunately, have to prevent it from ever happening as a result of you being a witch. There's all sorts of weird reality-bending stuff going on. I mean, I guess it's nice that Sayaka's not bitter about the whole affair. It seems that she's finally learned not to regret things. I'm glad that Sayaka doesn't seem to bear any ill will towards Hitomi, because despite, I guess, holding a villainous role in that love triangle, she really didn't do anything wrong. It's really nice how the timeline shifted like that, you know. Before, he was just performing for a couple judges, presumably as an application to get into a music school. And now he's performing in front of a crowded concert hall. And just like that, you know, Homura sort of wakes up in a new timeline. And just like that, you know, Sayaka's gone in this timeline. So rather than turning into a witch, instead she seemingly made a heroic sacrifice. Which I think is ultimately a better end than becoming a monster that you once would have fought. You know, it's not a perfect solution, but I think it's definitely a better one. That magical girls simply disappear and are taken to the afterlife rather than become monsters. But at the same time, in this new timeline, no one knows about Madoka. Homura is the only one. Of course, as soon as I say that, her little brother is drawing her in the sand with a stick. You know, it seems to me that this is, like, an indication that kids see, I don't know, more things than adults can, even if they can't rationalize it or express it. You know, Madoka's former parents sort of like, well, they don't understand it. They think the kid's being a little jerk pulling at her hair, but he really just notices the ribbon. Man, I'd imagine this is a really hard conversation for Homura to have, you know. Oh, Madoka's just an imaginary friend. And everybody seems to have, like, a sense of deja vu about the whole thing. But they just sort of chalk it up to that, rather than, I guess, a piece of reality that had been removed. You know, this whole conversation's almost like twisting the knife, you know. Madoka's a really cute name, and, you know, boy, you have that nice ribbon. That's exactly the style I would wear. I mean, she doesn't know what she's saying, but boy, that's gotta hurt a little bit. So here's something interesting here. You know, she's describing the world as it was to Kyubey. And, like, he doesn't really seem to believe her. You know, he says it's possible, theoretically. But, you know, without modifying the universe as a whole, there's no way to prove it. So, I guess the elephant in the room here is that I guess the incubators are better than they were, but, you know, Kyubey seems pretty open to the idea of harvesting emotion from magical girls by causing them to despair. So even Homura says it, you know, things are far less antagonistic with Kyubey here. I mean, obviously he's still the same sort of creature that lacks emotion and all that, but he's not openly antagonistic as he was before. So it's interesting. There still are these horrific nightmare creatures that do need to be fought, but they're not transformed magical girls as they were before. So I guess it's interesting, you know, Homura has essentially traded one world for another. And it almost seems like, in contrast to before, she is now alone in this, essentially, a crusade against evil. Well, that's a nice little touch there, that she now has a bow rather than the time powers as before. So I'm wondering if this is sort of like an apocalyptic scenario for this new world, where Homura, essentially alone, has to continue fighting these monsters. Although it seems like she's sort of an outlier in this system, in that her wings are sort of kind of reminiscent of the Witch's Labyrinth. It is nice how even then Madoka still reassures her. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.